You don't believe everything you hear. Is that true? You shouldn't. But that means you don't believe things that you know conflicting evidence or conflicting information. If you say God spoke to us at Mount Sinai on that day in the month of Sivan, and you say, no, I know for a fact that God was in Cleveland that day. See, that's a logical objection. So here's how this thing finally, ultimately gets resolved. Faith is a very important function and tool. Without faith, we can't handle the universe which we don't understand. We can't handle life that we don't understand. Why do bad things happen to good people? Without faith, that's the end of life. If we can't somehow tolerate or accept bad things happen to good people, and no, I don't know why. How do you survive a Holocaust without faith? You can't. How do you not become bitter, hateful, suicidal, apathetic? How do you pick up and build a life after a Holocaust? Rationally? Rationally, you shouldn't do it. Elie Wiesel, after the war, was absolutely determined not to get married, not to have children. What's the point? Why would you bring children into such a world? That's sensible. Oh no, you have to have children, you got to have a family. No, you don't. That is not sensible. The only reason we were able to bounce back after a Holocaust was on faith. I don't mean religious faith, but faith. Life will get better. Things will get better. That is such blind faith. This teenager I was talking to, who had a horrendous childhood. I mean, there's bad and there's horrendous. This one was horrendous. Her mother's sister finally adopted her and sent her to a day school. And she learned about God and about Mashiach, and it gave her a lot of hope. But she turned 18 and she said, "This is not real. I don't believe in Mashiach. I don't believe in God. Life is terrible." So when I spoke to her, I said, "So what are you going to do?" She said, "Knowing the problem, having experienced, when I get older, I'm going to find a way to make things better." So I said, "Make things better? Things don't get any better. This is a rotten world. Life stinks. What do you mean you're going to make it better?" She says, "Oh, come on, it can always get better." I said, "And you don't believe in Mashiach? What did you just say? It can always get better?" That is such blind faith. But you don't want to call it Mashiach? Call it whatever you want. But that is amazing faith. Because there's no evidence to support that. None at all. So without faith, which means without the ability to be comfortable with the fact that I don't know what's going on, and that's somehow it's okay. If we don't have that, we don't survive. On the other hand, if it's okay not to know and not to understand and not to make sense, why bother reading a book? But the way things work, what you believed yesterday, you understand today. The things we took as a principle of faith 100 years ago, now we understand it, it makes sense, we can explain it. Yesterday's faith becomes today's knowledge. That has been the progress of history. Do we believe in God? Is belief in God a leap of faith? Not anymore. There will come a time in the near future where there will be no more mysteries and everything we've always believed will become rational, understandable, practical. Because our mission has been since Mount Sinai or before, our mission has been bring God down to earth. Down to earth means sensible. If it doesn't make sense to us, he's not down to earth. He's still in heaven. And what's in heaven, we have to believe because we're on earth. So our job has been to bring God down to earth. If God comes down to earth, there are no more mysteries. So as of today, is God a mystery? Is God something you have to believe? Hopefully not. Those days are gone. I guess, for example, is there any place in the world, has there ever been a country, a society, a village, a tribe that did not believe in God? There has never been. I don't mean believe in God religiously. I mean, was there any community ever, anywhere, who didn't know about God? I don't know if they loved him or they hated him, but the idea was familiar everywhere, forever, throughout history. So if somebody comes along and says, there's no such thing, there's no such thing.
Didn't the Greeks themselves believe in a bunch of gods?
Yes. Yeah. Whatever. One God, 10 gods. But now you come along and say, there's no such thing as God. That is so irrational. The truth is that by now, God is the most established fact of all of history. That and anti-Semitism. Those are the two most consistent things in all of history. And everywhere. Yeah, but people disagree about what God is. Okay. Don't let that throw you. Everybody is in a debate about what God is. And is there one? Is there three? Is there 10? It's a hot subject. And it always has been. Don't tell me there's no such thing. You don't make any sense. It's like the whole world has been crazy for all of history. It's ridiculous. The fact that we speak of it means there is something. Look, some guy comes back from Australia. You've heard this? He's an explorer. He comes back from Australia and he says there's an animal down under that hops around on 2 feet and carries its baby in a pocket. And you, being a rational thinking human being, you say, you don't expect me to believe that. That's absurd. Would that be a rational reaction? Sounds like, right? Hey, I'm way too sophisticated to buy a story like that. Hey, you ain't going to pull the wool over my eyes. I'm not that naive. No, you're not naive. You're an idiot. What do you mean you don't believe it? What does that even mean? The guy says, I saw an animal that hops around on 2 feet and carries its baby in a pocket. And you say, oh no. Oh no. You're an idiot. Where do you get your opinion from? What is your argument? Your argument is, oh, that's ridiculous. I never heard of that. Why do they have explorers? To go to strange places and find out strange things. So, what do you mean you never heard of that? Or, I never saw anything like that. Right. That's why explorers get the big bucks. Because they see things you didn't see. So for the person to say, no, I don't believe that, it's completely brainless. Based on what? It's like a baby. Oh no. What would be a rational reaction? Somebody comes from Australia and says there's an animal that hops around on 2 legs and carries its baby in its pocket. Give me a rational reaction.
You have a picture?
You have a picture means I don't trust you. Prove it. That's not a rational. Huh?
What other strange things have you found?
Okay. Are we done with the kangaroo? That's all you want to know? So wait. Who carries the baby, the male or the female? What does it eat? Who are its predators? What, that's all? There's a strange animal down there. You're not curious? That would be a rational question. How many are there? So somebody comes along and says, on a certain day in the Hebrew month of Sivan, God came down to Mount Sinai and gave us 10 commandments. You expect me to believe that? No. I don't expect you to believe it. I just told you, so now you have evidence. There were people there and they saw it. Yeah, but I don't believe it. Based on what? Based on what? So the question, well, how do you know that's true? That's a silly question. I mean, do you do that with everybody?
But it's a certain fact that sticks out of the norm. It's not something that's, so it's more likely that the person can say, no, it's not rational for me to just believe this rational like anything else you would tell me.
There's a story, but there's also evidence that it didn't happen.
There is?
I mean, people make up reasons for, like why someone would invent such a religion.
I believe it's made up.
That's a conspiracy theory.
I believe it's
not true.
No, actually, the more unusual the event, the more curious you should be. If you're intelligent.
So you're saying how many questions has this person even asked to come to that conclusion of, I don't believe.
Yes. And the only reason he doesn't believe it is because he wasn't there. Well, you only believe things you were present?
Seeing
At-
is
at-
believing. Seeing is believing.
Right.
That's where it comes from.
So the point is this. This skepticism is not an act of intelligence. The mind doesn't really work that way. The mind is curious, even a child is curious, and every time I hear something I hadn't heard before, it's like, wow. If a scientist comes up with a new discovery, everybody gets excited. They don't say, what's the proof? Where's the proof? Who said?
Only they would.
Huh?
Only they would.
Sometimes they should, right? But the way the human mind works is that a discovery, which means something you don't yet understand, is exciting. It's like God created the world in 6 days. Oh, I don't think so. You don't think so? What is that? Yeah, I think it took at least 2 weeks. And it wasn't him, it was somebody else. What opinion do you have on the subject?
Scientists say they're claim that for sure from the beginning of time for all these things to develop, this will take much more time. But that's the claim at least.
Look, you don't believe everything you hear. You don't believe everything you hear. Is that true? You shouldn't. But that means you don't believe things that you know conflicting evidence or conflicting information. So if you say God spoke to us at Mount Sinai on that day in the month of Sivan, and you say, no, I know for a fact that God was in Cleveland that day. See, that's a logical objection.
I don't know, given how Cleveland is. I don't think that's very
Well, let's ask the people of Cleveland who still remember.
I think it was Florida.
Water supply.
Huh?
I think it was Florida.
Oh, it's Florida.
The thing though, like,
You see, now we got.
weather. Got like hot weather.
Anyway, so if there's a contradiction, then of course you got a problem. Because the mind can't stand contradictions. It's part of rationality. But when there is no contradiction, then you've learned something you didn't know before. Why would you reject that?
You have to trust where it's coming from. You don't just trust just because someone tells you.
You have to have a reason not to trust.
Right.
And the reason not to trust is because people lied to you, and now you're a little defensive. Not because you're being rational.
There's no way anyone lied to me.
You never believed in Santa Claus? So, what would be a rational question when somebody says to you, God created the world in 6 days?
Why not 7?
Why wouldn't it be
How you
to
doing?
see if there's any conflicting information?
Why would you go looking for conflicting information?
Because you can't believe everything you hear.
I think
Only if you already have conflicting information.
I heard that it was created about 1 billion years in school.
Okay,
So just like a conflicting information.
good question.
What about a big?
Good question. What about the Big Bang? Is that a contradiction?
Really, no, but because we know
It's not a contradiction.
consume. Yeah.
No.
No, sorry.
It's not a contradiction because it's a theory. It's not two theories arguing. So is there a contradiction to the Big Bang?
There's probably another theory.
Hmm?
There's probably another theory. I mean, it's a theory.
Rationalism?
It hasn't. It's not law.
Right. So what would be a rational question?
What created the atoms that made the Big Bang?
No. What would be a rational question if somebody says God created the world in 6 days?
What is God?
Yeah.
If the universe has to be created, then God also has to be created. And so on and so forth.
What is
Who created God? That's a good question.
the world?
But I don't believe it. What is that? What is that?
Right.
People used to think that God is what causes thunder when he's angry.
Story.
Then they found out what thunder is. See, so yesterday's belief becomes today's knowledge. I'll give an interesting example. This woman came to our program in Minnesota, and she's sitting in class, and I can see there's something, she's uncomfortable about something. And she's not saying. So I ask her, what's on your mind? She says, I heard, this is 1975 or something. She says, I heard that there was a little boy born in the community and that on Friday night they're making a party for him. And I asked, what do they do if a girl is born? And they said nothing. So I'm really upset. This was the beginnings of feminism. So a little boy is born, you make him a party. But if a little girl is born, nothing? Same problem here. That was not a rational question. She heard for the first time in her life that when a little boy is born, we make a party on Friday night. Her question is, what about a girl? Not a rational question.
Emotional question.
Because the rational question would be, why? Why on Friday? In other words, we're talking about the birth of a little boy. You never heard it before. You have no information about it. But your problem is only, what about a girl? Are you done with the boy?
Could you ask a rational question and you say, would you also do this for the girl?
Not yet. First,
Until you've exhausted all of the questions about the boy.
right. Because by then you wouldn't have your question about the girl. So she says, okay, so why? Why the party for the boy? You see, Shabbos was given to the Jewish people after they were circumcised. If you're not circumcised, you don't participate in Shabbos. Shabbos is not available to you. Every little boy that is born goes through one Shabbos in which he's not circumcised, because the circumcision is on the 8th day, and Shabbos comes around every 7 days. Do the math. So every little boy is going to be excluded from his first Shabbos.
Say somebody's not circumcised.
Hang up. So what do? We make a Friday night party, a Shabbos party, in honor of this little boy so that he gets to participate in the Shabbos. Otherwise, if he's born on Sunday, why do you make the party on Friday?
Right.
You're very patient. You're so excited a little boy is born, you wait a whole week before you make a party? Right. So the reason for the party on Friday night for a little boy that is born is so that that Shabbos would not be completely lost to him. Now, what is your question? Why not a little girl? Well, you got to learn the facts of life. And okay, now, what happens if the little boy is not circumcised on this eighth day, and another Shabbos goes by? Do we have to make him another party? No. It's not that a newborn boy is not circumcised. It's that he can't be. You're not allowed to do a circumcision before the eighth day. So he doesn't have the mitzvah of circumcision. Once the eighth day goes by, he has the mitzvah. If he wasn't well and you couldn't perform the mitzvah, that's a technicality. But he is part of the mitzvah, so he's part of Shabbos. Doesn't have to have another party. But you see what happens. Before you know why there's a party for the boy, you have a problem. What about a girl? Well, of course you're going to have that problem. You don't know what a boy is yet. You're not going to understand what a girl is. So there's a logical way of thinking that makes a person right-minded. There are other ways of thinking that are twisted, torturous. There are people who ask the most irrelevant questions to every subject, and it's like annoying. In fact, there's a certain kind of genius that is the ability to look directly at the relevant information without being sidetracked. It's called the genius of simplicity. But the brilliance or the genius of simplicity is because it leads to practical conclusion. You come away, you know something. Like very often a philosophy class, you sit there straining your brain to keep up, and at the end it's like, so what did he say? Well, we don't know. That took an hour?
It's like him.
Sometimes like Gemara. So, today, not to believe in God is totally irrational. It's emotional, not intelligent. Again, I don't mean believe like worship him. Just know that there is such a thing. And therefore asking, tell me more about God is a very rational question. Everyone's talking about it. Tell me more. Where did he come from? How was he first discovered? Isn't that a good question? We have a Sunday night program for VIPs that you might be interested in. It's informal. It's questions and answers. It's conversation. It's really relaxed. It's really pleasant, enjoyable, informative, and kind of community-like. It's a Sunday night program. There's a Wednesday morning program for the VIPs, and there's a Wednesday night program. All of it just conversation, casual, laid back, unscripted. So join us. Take a look. Click the link below and see which of the three suits you best, and join us for some enjoyable conversation.